Super excited to hear from the offensive coordinator of the Laurier Golden Hawks, Todd Galloway. Coach Galloway is the current OC for Laurier. He played 4 seasons for the Purple and Gold between 2000 and 2003 and was a member of the 2005 Vanier Cup coaching staff. Coach Galloway has over 17 years of coaching experience in youth sports. Following his time as a receiver coach with the Golden Hawks between 2004 and 2006, he moved on to the Maritimes, serving on the Huskies coaching staff while also coaching high school football. He returned to Ontario in 2011, joining the Guelph Griffins, where he spent 8 seasons serving in a variety of capacities. During his time with the Griffins, he oversaw the growth of their program as the team made 4 Yates Cups appearances, winning the championship in 2005. And I am super excited to hear about some receivers, Coach Galloway. So the floor is yours.
Thank you for the introduction. And to kind of piggyback on what Coach Flax was saying there, guys, this is super exciting for us as well to be able to get on and talk some football. We're all kind of looking for some optimism right now, and it seems to be trending in the right direction. So I think the timing of this is incredible as well. And so, yeah, I'm going to talk receivers a little bit, and I'm going to open right up into a bit of a presentation, and then we'll get to some film. And so, like you said, my name's Coach Galloway, offensive coordinator. I've been an offensive coordinator in the OUA for 7-8 years now at the University of Guelph. And then went to McMaster in 2019 and coached with really good friends of mine, Coach Potasic and Coach Corey Grant. And we had some fun working on the offense together there. And then I've been fortunate enough now to come home to my alma mater. And so got hired in February of 2020, and we all kind of got into a pandemic in March of 2020. And so haven't had a chance to put some of the things onto the field yet, but I've had a great chance to get to know the players and the organization, and it feels really good to be home. And so really, really excited to get going. What I want to talk about today is some of the receiver fundamentals. And so there's so many different tangents and directions you can get when you're talking in receiver play. And so I wanted to just kind of focus on the route running mechanics itself. And so we're going to start with some of the basics of stance and start. And then at the end, I'll show you some of the drills that we do for it. With stance and start in our Canadian game comes the waggle, and then the different types of releases that we might see and different things that we can do to aid ourselves in getting the different type of releases. Then we'll talk a little bit about the common types of breaks we can use at the top of our routes. And then if there's time, I don't want to go over, but I want to talk about just a couple little drills that you can add in to have immediate return on investment in your offense. And that's teaching your guys how to properly run corners and just doing top end corner routes. And something that we do in just about everyday drills and done it for years is a simple mesh drill. And so if you guys are running crossing routes or a mesh concept, having a really, really solid mesh drill so your quarterbacks and receivers are on the same page, not only can help increase your completion percentage on a play like this, but can help keep your receivers out of danger. And so we want to make sure that we're good there. And so anytime I get a chance to talk about route running mechanics, it all has to understand or start with a little bit of an understanding of DBs and the different type of techniques they're going to use and how we want to manipulate those techniques. And so that's where we always start. Whether we're working with our upper year guys or our true freshmen, we want to start from the beginning with, I need to know what the DB's technique is. And so I think kind of like what Coach Flax was saying, you need to develop a terminology that your entire coaching staff can use, and you need to be consistent with that terminology. And so when we talk about approaching a line of scrimmage or reading our DB, we talk about depth, leverage, and key. Those are the 3 things that we can know pre-snap. Depth, how far off is my defender, right? Leverage, what type of leverage or shade is he lining up on me? And key, right? How are his hips playing me? Is he square facing me, like he's going to be in a catch technique, or he's in a back pedal man? Is he open key, where his hips are 45 to me and they're facing the quarterback? Or is he closed key, closed down to the sideline? So every time we get into a film session now, right, we'll get up and we'll say, hey, depth, leverage, key. And now they can say, hey, off man, open key, right? And so inside shade, off man, open key, where you could say, hey, he was catch depth, square key, right? And he's head up. And so now we can talk a common language when we get in, and understanding some of these things, depth, leverage, key. Well, now we can teach the different route running techniques, because the route running techniques are slightly different versus all of these depths, leverages, and keys, right? And so we need to have tools in our toolbox and develop tools to those toolbox of how to beat all of the different depths that they can play at, all the different shades or leverages they can keep, and the different keys that they want to play. And so with a bit of an understanding, we'll start with the stationary, traditional. This stuff is pretty basic when it comes to it. The only thing that I say maybe we teach a little bit differently, the first stuff is common. Shoulders over knees over toes, I think is really important. Inside foot up, I like the weight transfer of 70-30 on the front foot. I'm not a fan of the front foot facing in. And if you've ever got guys who like to put that front foot in to the line of scrimmage, if you ask them to look down and just watch, the very first thing they do when they take off is their foot does this. Their foot goes straight and then they take off, and it's all wasted motion. And I have to say, if you look at sprinters, when sprinters get in a box, if we're in this 70-30 technique, that means we're not getting pressed. If a sprinter's in a box, he's not starting with his toes pigeon-toed into the box, right? We want to start in that sprinter stance, and that means the same with our hands as well. If our hands are up, if we're getting possible press, and I actually teach, like the picture on the bottom there, we want to be in a little bit of a sprinter ready if we're not. And so if I'm right leg up, foot to the quarterback up, right, I'm going to have that other arm back so that when I take off, I'm ready to immediately get into my running motion with no wasted space at all, no false steps at all because of great weight transfer. And then the last thing, which some people might teach it, I find it helps our guys. If you are getting press, then I teach my guys that they can widen their stance a little bit, get a little bit more of a balanced weight on their front foot, back foot, because this is not how fast we get across the line of scrimmage anymore. This becomes about how cleanly we can get off the ball. And so the wider stance and a little bit more balanced in our stance allows us to come to balance quicker when we then talk about the different types of releases that we can take. So for me, stance and start is all about minimizing the wasted time and the wasted space and being as efficient as possible. Now we get to our beautiful Canadian game. And again, only typically 2 of them are on the line of scrimmage. So you want to make sure that you're not just teaching everybody how to get off the line of scrimmage, right? The 2 slot backs, or if you're in a 5R system, the 3 slot backs are all taking runs at the line of scrimmage. So they're actually spending more time on their waggle than they ever are in a stationary stance and start. So we want to make sure we're working on that waggle. It allows for lateral movement pre-snap. And the big thing about attacking at angles and utilizing lateral movement is we're trying to hurt the DB's leverage. We're trying to manipulate their alignment. We're trying to get them not to have the strong base in their feet if they're trying to play a little bit of catch technique and get hands on us. We want to get them moving laterally so that they don't have their base underneath them anymore. And now when they try to shoot hands and slow our route down, it's not as violent and we're able to get off it a lot easier. Obviously, it creates speed before the snap of the ball and allows you to much easier attack at those angles. Moving pre-snap, you can get a better read on man or zone, and especially if you incorporate motion into your waggles. And if it's not press or catch, obviously speed is your friend. And now you can attack and time the cadence, and you want to hit that at almost full speed, and you want to get on those DB's toes as fast as possible. If it is press or attack, again, we can use that waggle to really manipulate that DB better than if we were stationary on the line of scrimmage. And now we can get in and out of him, and we can manipulate and get him moving laterally to try to cover us and cover the space we're covering. And we're going to just try to put him in a less athletic position. So then when we talk about the types of releases, so now we've talked about stance and we've talked about a waggle getting up to the line of scrimmage. Well, now you kind of need to know there's 3 main types of releases that we teach and we talk about. The first one obviously is press. And so this can be on the line of scrimmage. This can be, I've got a guy trying to play catch technique to my slot back at 2 yards and he's not moving off the spot. He's all or nothing trying to press me there. If I'm starting with press release from a stationary, I want to widen my stance if it helps me come to balance. And then to start in generalities, we teach two hand fighting techniques. I call them the slap technique and the rip technique. Not a fan of the swim technique just because it exposes our ribs. And for anybody that's not here just as learning about receivers, or if you guys learn and you know about D linemen as well, in some past years, I've sent receivers down to D line, right? And rip techniques and slap techniques and club rip unders and all of that stuff. There's actually a lot of commonality between D-line pass rush moves and receiver press release moves trying to get off the line of scrimmage. And so slap technique for us is we are going to be patient. We never want to be the first person to shoot hands, but we're going to swipe that one off with one hand and we're going to slap with the second hand. Rip, we're going to swipe and rip from bottom up under, and we'll get through it. And so that's the general press. Within press, we then teach our guys three types of press. And I've got one or two examples of some of these. And so speed release is now when you're going to come to balance, and he's not really interested in throwing hands. And so as you come to balance, you're immediately going to burst and try to win with speed off the line of scrimmage on a press technique player. And so this is most often used with things like curl routes or stop routes or comeback routes, where we're trying to create that illusion right off the line of scrimmage that we're trying to win vertically. So we want to speed release right off the line of scrimmage, scare them vertically, get their hips opened up, and even in a trail technique right away, so that we can then slam on the brakes and try to get them to run by. A single move is probably the most common one that people are using, whether they know it or not. And this is where we're going to come to balance and we're going to evaluate the DB and how aggressive he is. But then we're going to use a single juke or a single head fake. And so we're going to try to fake to the side that we're not going and try to get him to move off of his spot a little bit. And then we're going to use that hand fighting technique to work to the side we actually want to go. The one at the bottom, again, I don't recommend for everybody, but if you've got somebody who's got a lot of juke or is really good at getting off the line of scrimmage, now after coming to balance and winning on your single moves a few times, you can set up a double move. And really all that is you're going to set up going to the side you want to go, and then faking with a head fake back the other way, and then actually working back in your initial direction. I will put the caveat with these that if you're going to get into some of this stuff, make sure that it works within the context of the routes you're running and the context of how it times up with the quarterback's drop and the quarterback's throw. We've got some routes where we call it like an X-Indy, where he's running a timed 10-yard out to the boundary, the wide out. I can't have him doing a double move on something like that because my quarterback is taking a quick three and ripping the ball, and timing is important on a throw like that. So he's only going to work a speed release if he gets something like that. Right. And so we want to make sure that we're using it within the confines that works in our system. But obviously, we want to try to get off the ball with that as minimal disruption as possible. And so the next type of press release the next type of release we'll see is a space release. And so we've got some guys in our conference who will get right up in your face and will throw hands and will press you. We've got some guys who I call space releases, where they're just going to give you enough space that it's a little bit awkward. Right? So you've got a boundary corner that's playing you 3 yards off, right? And he could be playing soft press, right? Or you've got a slot back on a halfback who's playing squat or catch technique at about 3 to 4 yards, right? So it's not close enough that you need to do something right at the line of scrimmage, but it's not so far that if you come off with too much speed, you're going to end up in his lap right away. And it's going to be hard for you to hand fight because you've come off the ball too quickly. And so we teach a few different techniques. Our guys have settled already working with me here that they like the foot fire and they like the power skip. And really all we're trying to do is if I'm a stationary boundary wide out on the line of scrimmage and my boundary corner is playing 3 yards off, and so it's too far away to just be a press release. They're going to, if you take power skip as an example, they're literally just going to skip at him and they're going to move the line of scrimmage into a press release. And so what that does is it rapidly closes the gap while doing a type of footwork that's going to allow you to still come to balance. And then you can do a press release do a speed release, do a single move, do a double move, pair it with the hands you want to use, and we're now balanced and in an athletic position when we're ready to attack that DB that's 3 to 4 yards off. And we haven't stumbled too far past the line of scrimmage, and now we just have too much momentum built up, and he whacks us, and we're thrown off of our route. And then the last type of release that I'll talk about here is obviously the secondary release. And so this is used when we get off man, squat technique that's maybe 6 yards or further. And now the priority has to be closing the gap, right? And so if he's so far off that he's beyond the depth of our route, we don't really need to worry about any of these releases, right? Now we're just worried about closing the gap, running the route at our proper depth, and we'll get into stemming and leverage and all of that stuff next. But this is for if I need to close the gap first, right? And so now my priority is to attack with as much speed as possible. Then as I get 3 to 4 yards away, I could use a space release. Now I can do a little mini skip or a foot fire at him once I've closed that cushion. And then maybe I can do a press technique if I need to get by him, right? Or if I'm a slot back, maybe I'll do a little mini power skip and then a one-arm crash to get him off so that I'm not losing speed as I'm going by him. And so those are the 3 types of releases that we talk about. Right on the line of scrimmage, maybe 2 to 3 yards beyond the line of scrimmage, and maybe 6 to 7 yards beyond the line of scrimmage because our route is deeper than that. Then we get into talking a little bit about stems and leverages. And so now I've kind of gotten into my route. And the other thing I'll say is if you're talking about a stem, you're probably already implying that it wasn't necessarily press man, because in press man, now you're talking about using your release first and then maybe stacking and doing things like that. This is once you're in your route, right? You want to try to gain leverage on a DB. And the 3 most common scenarios, and hopefully in the film, I can show you a little bit of some of them, is this. 1, you get a clean release, and then you can stack or semi-stack, but you're in the primary position that you want to be, right? Does not happen all the time. So don't teach your receivers just something like this. We actually spend a lot of time on teaching, hey, I didn't get a clean release, but maybe I got to the third of the body I want. So now I need to be working on leaning on that defender so he doesn't push me off my line, right? Then we want to make sure that we try to get his hips moving vertically with ours. So we got to threaten him vertically. Right? And then we'll use something like a chicken wing to create separation at the break point. And so that's the next best scenario, right? But then you also want to have in your toolbox, what's the worst case scenario, right? Oh, shoot, I didn't get a clean release. And now I'm on the wrong side. Did I get muted there for a second? Sorry. Can you hear me okay, Aaron?
Yep, you're good.
Okay, sorry, I just got told on my screen that I was muted. Didn't get a clean release, and you're on that wrong leverage, and so now you still want to lean on that defender, right? Now you want to burst with speed, and then you want to try to use a push by or a club rip under to try to regain leverage at that break point, right? And so in the film, I'll show you a few examples of some of those that we teach. And then some of the other moves, and you'll see these in the cut up as well. I think now once you get talking about stemming, you can't run straight at people. You can't just run in the same direction the entire time. And so there's a couple secondary stem moves that can be easily your best friend as you get through some of this. First one being the stair step. A lot of people hear stair step and they think it's just exclusively on a crossing route, and it gets used a lot on a crossing route. And so this is where you maybe want to attack a defender vertically at their inside shoulder, and then you want to flatten your route quickly to make them want to come down, and then you climb back up and it kind of looks like a stair, right? And then at your depth, you can then break across the field. So you're just really trying to manipulate his hips across the field so that when you're ready to burst, you've got the advantage of gaining separation. Also works great if you're going to have somebody setting a pick on a mesh or something like that. Pressure steps are things that receivers are probably using that they may not even know they're doing, but this is when you want to attack at the inside third of somebody's body, right? Once you get that leverage from your stem, you want to then straighten him up with a pressure step. 3 to 4 yards away, you want to vertically attack him to scare him and try to put him on his heels. And then we can use whatever break we're going to talk about before getting in. And the jerk stem is literally just the opposite. And so that's something, again, I'll show a couple examples, but I want to press at the off shoulder or the backside shoulder of the direction that I'm running my route to. And so I want to get him moving laterally in that direction. Then I want to scare him vertically and try to open him up. And then I can work back across his body into the direction of the route I want to run. And so hopefully some of this makes more sense when we get to the film. I just wanted to get through some of these so that when we talk and see the film, it makes more sense. Now, when we get to the top of our route, right? And again, these are all drills that we will do. And I'm going to show you a few of them, but there's different types of common breaks that we're going to use. So for us, some people call it, you want to put a stick on the top of your route. We call it a stick, or we actually call it a BAM step, right? This is putting a defined plant step into the top of your corner routes, into the top of your post routes, right? And so you shouldn't lose speed when you do this, but it's very important that you do these. And the two reasons are, is one, you want to put a little bit of deception on your DB, right? But a defined stick is actually very good and very predictable for your quarterback to time up releasing the ball to you. And so a defined BAM step or a defined stick actually helps your quarterback know when you're going to that corner, know when you're going to that post, so they can start leading you on that trajectory. And then the other ones are, we teach two-step breaks. Some people will say three-step breaks for these ones, but I just call it a two-step. And these are really if you're doing 90-degree or greater cuts, but these are kind of in your quick game. So you haven't built up so much speed that you can still go one break step, one plant step. And so it's not a speed cut. We often use these on what we call our sticky outs. And so we want to break down in two steps and try to freeze the DB's toes. And then we're going to go to the quick out or the quick in. And so we want to make sure that we are teaching them how to quickly come to balance in two steps. First step is your break step. Second step is your plant step. And then obviously there's so much more conversations we can be had about making sure we're coming out of it. We're shading the top of our route. We could get into that for another hour. The square cut is now just deeper. And so you've built up too much momentum for a two-step cut. So now you might need 2 or 3 break steps. And so some people would call this a 5-step plant, or if you needed it, a 7-step plant. But you actually want to work with your guys in drills on learning how few steps they need or how few break steps they need to come to balance to do the different routes in your offense. And so this one, if I'm running that slot back 12-yard dig, or maybe the wide out 16-yard dig, or the comeback, right? And I've built up so much speed that I might need 2 break steps, or I might need 3 break steps to really come to balance to get in there. And then for us, speed cuts are important. These are used when you don't want to lose speed, or if a cushion is not broken by the time you've gotten to your break point, right? And now it's just a race to the spot. So now we're not doing any break steps at all. Now we just want to, 1, plant on our outside foot, 2, place 45-degree instep, and then 3, plant on our outside foot again to make sure that we're 90 or greater, right? And this is something that is obviously vital to everybody's offense, and it's something that we have to do. The simplest drill I could say for something like a speed cut, and again, if you've ever had or watched across the field and you've seen D linemen running the hoop, right? Go steal the hoop for a day, and you'll learn how to run as fast as you can on the inside of your feet running around a hoop, and you'll learn how fast you can speed cut in a hurry. If you don't, you just put the cones around in a circle and teach the guys how to run as fast as possible around that circle. And they're going to learn at what speed can they do a speed cut safely. And so all of that kind of comes together as this. And this is homework that we do as receivers, right? And so it's all about, if I go back to my first slide, it's depth, leverage, key. And all of those techniques I just showed are not applicable to every depth, every leverage, and every key. So what we do is we actually make them come up with a checklist. And being good at running routes is about having a plan. It's not about winging it when you get out there, right? And so we can know depth, leverage, key pre-snap. So I can have a bit of a running checklist in my brain. So if you see on this here, I've just got defender, right? Is he in press? Is he in soft press? Is he playing me squat technique off? Is he playing bail? Okay, so what stance would I want to use for all of those? What release or what start do I want to take? If it's press, well, I'm going to maybe use one of my press releases. If he's soft press, I'll use a space, right? If he's off man, I got to attack and close cushion, right? What kind of stem do I want to use? Well, press, I got to stack and lean on him, right? If it's off, maybe I want to use my pressure step or my jerk stem, right? And so we want to make sure we have a route running checklist so our guys have a plan versus everything they're going to see that game. And then you also kind of can have a breakpoint checklist. So is he off at my breakpoint and I haven't closed the cushion, right? Have I stacked him, right? Are we kind of hand fighting, but I've won leverage? Are we kind of hand fighting, but I haven't won leverage? Am I on the wrong side, but I'm kind of over top of them by a step, right? And so you want to know what you're going to do versus all of these different techniques. And so what we do in season is I will create a cut up of every single starting DB, and they can just watch it. Okay, this is how he plays in off man. This is how he plays in press. And they can build a little library and they write it down and they learn it by the end of the week. And so this is how I want to run my different routes if I'm getting inside shade, press, close key. Right? If I'm getting off man, open key, outside shade, right? Okay, I've created a little bit of a checklist of how I want to be prepared to run my routes versus the different leverages that I will face. And so that is the first part. I think I'm doing okay. And so I'm going to jump in and just to double check. Aaron, are you seeing film okay?
Yep, you're good.
All right. So now just to add some of the elements of the drills, and this is some of our true freshmen who didn't get a season in the fall, and this is just some of our outdoor potted workouts. And so we're going to start from the beginning. And so as I get this up, all we're doing here is stance and start. And so we're lining guys up. And again, I'm going to get that habit out of them. They're young and they're new. But we're teaching them how to put their weight 70-30, and we're teaching them in, and we're going to burst for 5, and we're going to stop on the every 5. And again, what I'm trying to teach them to start is, if we look at this gentleman here on the left, I want him to learn, especially as a tall guy, that I got to come out with a forward lean. And then if I'm going to start teaching 2 steps, right, 2-step square cuts, I don't want to rise up. I don't want to pop up into my break. I want to sink lower, right? And learn how to get shoulders over knees over toes, not just in my stance and start, but how to get shoulders over knees over toes at my break point. And so it's interesting when you see them, right? We look like we're taking a poop in the woods, right? He did as well. This guy's getting it, and he's sinking into his break. Right? A DB is waiting. A DB is hoping that you're going to give them body language at your break point and rise up. And so we're just going to simplify it to stance and start, stop it on the 5 yards. Stance and start, 2-step break on the 5 yards. All right. And we'll continue that drill all the way through. And this is just us teaching our young guys how to get in a stance and start and how to break down every 5 yards. And again, they think it's simple, but it's not. Then what I like to do with drills is every time you do a drill, you want to add a layer of context that adds reality to a game, right? Not too often are we just going to run straight for 5 yards. And so now we're going to add inside stem, stop, 2-step break at 5 yards. Inside stem, stop, break at 5 yards, right? And they're not doing it great, but I'm just introducing them to that concept. If it's not going to be straight, we're going to want to work to a leverage, and you can break your drills down in parts so that you can emphasize different things that you need to work on. And so the next part to it is now all I'm doing with them is I'm going to set up a cone to start. I'm going to set up a cone and a cone in a triangle. And now they're just going to work to different leverages to a route. And so all I'm doing here is, hey, I want you to take an inside stem, and then I want you to run it out. And we're just teaching them. And again, we're not going full speed. We're not doing anything. I just want to teach them the different elements and what they feel like. And we actually did this drill for 35, 40 minutes. And so we teach them how to do it to that cone, to the out. We want to then teach them how to straighten up to that cone. to the out, and we just want to put tools in their toolbox, right? And so some of them look like baby giraffes trying to figure out their bodies when they come to us, but he's trying to put a little two-step head fake into it and learn how to run that route. So it allows us to just easily break down the components of the route and isolate different parts of it to be successful. Now what we're doing is the next progression of this drill. And so we're going to bring them through again to a cone out here and a cone out here. And now we're just going to work it from a hook perspective. So they got to stem, pressure step, hook, or stem, jerk step, hook. Because our quarterback, who's throwing some amazing, and I think I saw Coach Dennison come on, please don't judge my ball and judge my throw. But right, we're going to stem, straighten up, try not to rise up, sink into a two-step, come out. And again, there's so many conversations we can have about stab and knife and tuck the ball. And Coach Flax did a great job. Please don't judge how he tucked that away. We're working with the young kids, right? But we're going to work on the different elements of each route. So, well, often, and I know I coached high school for a little bit, and you're limited with how many people you can get out and what you're doing. Instead of just saying run a hook, right? Let's run a hook on an inside shade off man. Let's run a hook on an outside shade off man. Let's run a hook in a press man. And you can work all the more realistic elements, and you can make much greater corrections. Right, so we're working to that cone. And again, lots of bad habits to get out. He's sinking, but loses his arms. DB will see that, and DB will want to jump, right? But we're going to teach these young kids the basics of route running mechanics to start, right? 75%, I want to get it all down to a science, right? And so here's us just now doing it the other way. So I'm going to work an outside stem, a jerk step, and I'm going to turn back in. And so I want to make sure that I'm covering off all the different depth leverages and keys that I'm going to see. I'm not just asking them to run an 8-yard hook. So those are some simple drills that we can do. And then, like I said, we incorporate it and build up to bigger indie sessions. And so now all we're doing is we're taking a simple drill like that and working it 2 at a time. And so now we're going to say, hey, he's going to work an outside leverage, work a speed cut. Outside, we're going to work a 2-step cut, right? And so he's got speed, plant, instep, plant, and he's out. Outside receiver out here, right? We're going to work 1-2, in and out, and we can come and we can work on them, and all different elements of the route we can isolate and we can work it. And we'll work these kind of progressions all the time. And so now we've got the deeper one coming from here. So he's going to try to work, and he's not capable of getting a 2-step in. So he takes 2 break steps, right? And so we can just work on, can I 2 break step? Can I 1 break step? Can I 3 break step? How am I going to get in and out of these, right? And then how am I going to stab and knife? How am I going to come out of this? How am I going to get my ball security on, right? We'll work through all of those elements. Right? And then you keep adding layers of reality depending on what type of offense you run. And so we're an offense that's going to run some switch release stuff. And so now we want to just drill the switch release into it. It's the same one, but again, I don't want to just ask them to run an 8-yard in. If in a game, I'm going to ask them to run it this way. So you want to create as much reality as possible into the way that they're going to run these routes. Right? And then if I build it up from a progressionary standpoint, so I make sure I didn't miss one. I think I did. Yep. Right. Now we're going to talk about crossover and applying it in a competitive period. So here's a wide out. All right. And again, I always say, what do you got? So he's got off man, open key, maybe a little bit inside shade. Right. So just like the drill they did in Indy earlier, he decides, well, inside shade, I'm going to attack him with an inside stem before I get to my simple 6-yard out. And so instead of just running straight at him, we create a scenario where we can attack, burst, 2-step to my out, right? You don't always just have to run straight and use a speed cut. We know that he's within our danger zone, so we want to attack, manipulate, and get back to the out. Right, here's a running back who doesn't have a ton of experience running routes, and so for him, it's subtle, and he's learning. right? His first week out, he would run straight, run it out, and the linebacker would just cover him and undercut his throws. Now he's understanding that we got to attack a DB's technique. And then when we go to the out, we're going to freeze his hips enough that we get him on his heels. And now we can win through our break. And now we can create some separation and have a chance to win in our routes. And so, again, it's just about understanding the different techniques and the different tools based on what the defender's trying to do. And so, again, we've got a receiver who's a little bit off man, open key, inside shade. And so he's like, I'm going to work to his back heel. I'm going to pressure step, and then I'm going to give him a stick at the top of my route. And that's going to allow me to freeze his hips, right? And so, and this gets into a bit of a greater conversation that we work with our guys because we see a lot of open key, right? And open key is his hips 45 so that he can read both of you, right? And so if he's even in more of an off-man position, he can almost read the quarterback through the hot phase of the route to see if this is quick game or not, and he can periff you as he gains his depth. Well, the number one thing that we teach on guys like this is their greatest weakness is attacking their back heel and trying to get in their blind spot, right? So he'll use an outside stem, a pressure step, and a single move when he steps on his toes to try to keep him in that open key as long as possible, right? So now it's just a few different types of things incorporating all different kinds of routes. And I think these are in breakers now. So he knows he's got off man with a waggle. And so he's trying to close the gap as fast as possible. He also knows that he wants to win with leverage. So you can see he's starting to win with leverage by trying to work that inside stem. The thing I like about Ben is he realized here in one step, he earned leverage. He doesn't keep melting to his window. As soon as he realizes he's earned the leverage he wants, he straightens back up because we want to threaten him vertically. And then depending on the type of receiver you have, 2 steps good. Speed cut could be okay because there's no collision necessary. All right, but we're going to give them those tools in their toolbox so that they can make those different decisions. All right, and here's Petey, and some of you guys have guys who run routes like the last one. Some of them have a little bit more shake in their game. And so guys like Petey will have a little bit of liberty. And so he comes in with a radical waggle, and we talked about trying to move the DB off his spot and get him unseated and not have his base under him. And then he's going to use a little double move at the top of his route to try to freeze his feet before going into his route. And so that allows us to do a lot of it. And I know I'm on in-breaking routes I've been talking about now, and I like keeping this one in here because you're going to see off-man, open key, inside shade. And so again, you see he's not trying to win leverage. He's not trying to win on an inside shade, straighten him up and go to the in, right? That's the more traditional way to do it. He recognizes with an open key player, well, maybe I want to outside press him, straighten up, and then I can, after my jerk stem, I can run a 2-step or a 3-step in, right? And what I want you to notice, and this is 2 pretty good kids going at it. This is Ente and Willamoa, both were at a CFL combine. Is that if you understand depth, leverage, and key, well, now we can start to understand how to manipulate hips and momentum. And so by outside stemming on an open key player, I can now get his hips more easily turned vertically because their greatest fear is getting into their blind spot and potentially getting beat deep in their blind spot. I can quickly open his hips and get his hips and momentum facing downfield. So now when I step on the brakes, even though he's got a little bit of leverage, he doesn't have hips or momentum that can drive on the football. And so again, now I'll get into just a couple ones that are including all different types of things. And so we're using waggle. We've got a man who's off, and this is a little deeper one, but this is an example of a foot fire before a move. So now I've come in, I've foot fired to try to freeze his feet. Again, the only caveat I would put on a foot fire is we also teach our guys to foot fire to a vertical, because what we're trying to create here is when we come out and foot fire, right, they're going to try to set a base because they think a break is coming. And then we add a single move into it with a head fake, and then we can come out of our break and have some success. Another in-breaking route, and this gets to the technique that I talked about, wrong leverage. And so we've got a receiver here, and he's just a young kid when he was in pads here. We're going to outside stem, right? And I don't know if you've ever had your receivers come up to me in one-on-ones and indies, and right, they're out here with a guy who's playing 3 yards inside shade, and they're like, "Coach, you keep giving me a dig." And I keep trying to win leverage, straighten up, and run the dig, and the guy just keeps running the route for me, right? Well, I tell my guys, take an outside stem, take an outside leverage, and bring the party to you. And so now what you see here is he works an outside leverage. Yes, he's on wrong leverage right now to run a dig, but he's got his DB in the blind spot. And now when the DB open turns to refind him, right, we can now slam on the brakes, push by, or club rip under like we talked about, right? And now we can re-win our leverage at the break point, right? And like I said, he's learning, and he bonks one off his helmet. And like all receivers, he looks at his gloves like it's his gloves' fault. And so same thing, right? I'm running a comeback, and I got a couple examples of a comeback, right? Again, it's not about fading out necessarily on these techniques and how well you can sell it. It's still just about getting in the blind spot. And so he takes an outside stem on an open key player, gets right in his blind spot. He's going to that comeback before the DB is able to flip his hips 180. So we get off, good one, lots of space down to the sideline. I know I'm rushing through a few of these because I'm trying to, for Aaron's sake, not end up over. So come back as well. And what I wanted to show this one is this is a pretty good example of, this is, looks like press, and then this is a speed release. So we're going to come to balance. No hands are thrown because no hands are needed to be thrown. So when we come to balance, if no hands are thrown, and I know I'm running something like a comeback where I want to try to scare him with speed, I'm going to speed release off the ball without any hand fight, right? And then now I know I want to push vertically, push vertically. What he does is he actually kind of gives him just the slightest illusion that this thing could be going to the seam or the post. And then we want to sink into that break as hard and as fast as we can so that we can come out of that and have success on our route. Right. So again, it kind of just adds in all the elements of having a plan, right? I know I'm running a comeback. I know what his technique is, right? I may not know if this is going to be a press release where he throws hands or not, but I'm going to come to balance and find out. And when I see he doesn't throw hands, I speed release. I try to lean on him and stack him. I fall out as fast as I can, and now I can make that play. Right. Next little stack, we talked about different types. So this is now a stack to a BAM step. And so again, Romy's going to come in. He maybe doesn't have to scrape so wide. He can scrape a little bit tighter, recognizes that he wants to stack, right? And then this is what we call a BAM step. We want to give a little definitive BAM step. And it's a little head fake to throw him off, but it's definitive enough that our quarterback now knows to take that front hand off the ball and trigger. Right, and then same thing applies with here. So Romy, who I just showed you, he's got a lot of shake. Right, here's somebody who maybe doesn't. So he's going to use his waggle to his advantage, try to get this hard catch technique player off his line. And you can see when we get 10, the defender here moving laterally, he doesn't have his base under him. And so now we can use a backdoor one-arm crash technique. And then now his BAM step is, again, it's not as elusive as the last one, but it's defined enough that the quarterback now knows to take his hand off the ball, pull the trigger, and we can time those up a lot better when we know when he's making that break step. And that little BAM step at the top of his route is enough to give him that trigger. All right, I think I got, Aaron, do I got 5-6 minutes?
Yeah, a couple minutes.
Couple minutes. I'll be quick. All right. So just to switch gears of what I promised I'd try to show, if you are going to have 2 other simple drills that I think can really, really improve the timing of your offense, running man corners and teaching guys. So this is just a top end corner drill where we're going to start them about 6 yards into the route. They're not going to leave on a snap. They're going to leave on my clap. And so I'm trying to time this up as best I can. What I want them to do is put a BAM step in, and he's doing his BAM step right there. And what we teach is we then want to take a touchdown angle, right? Where's the cone in the back of the end zone? Some people teach you want to break like 11:30 or 12:30, as skinny as possible, right? I'm going to take a touchdown angle. I'm going to take 3 steps running at that touchdown angle, and then I'm going to look back, right? And because our quarterback can now time our trajectory, place our trajectory, we can be consistent with our trajectory. And now I've taken a skinny enough angle that if the quarterback in man needs to throw me up, right, he can. If he needs to flatten me out, right, I can always adjust down to the ball. It's a lot harder to adjust back up to a ball. So I want to take that touchdown angle, and then he can time me and flatten me out if he needs to flatten me out. And so here's our guys just working on it. Run, run, then look, and I can adjust to the ball. And so just to try to catch one, again, he takes it, runs, now he looks, and he needs to be flattened out. He can easily adjust to that flattened ball, right? And so the benefit is we take that BAM step, the 3 skinny steps to the corner. Well, if it's man and I have a DB, that DB is on this path with me to the corner as well. So now if the quarterback wants to flatten me out, it's a lot cleaner to adjust to the ball in the air. And so I'll just show 1 or 2 of these. And so now we look at from this angle, I'm going to BAM, I'm going to run, then I'm going to look up. And that, again, creates body language. That's good trajectory, pumping my arms, not opening my shoulders as much when I turn back. And if my quarterback wants to throw me high, he's in a good position to throw me high. If he wants to drop me low, he's in a good position to drop me low. Our initial aiming point for him was the pylon in the back corner of the end zone. And if the quarterback wants to lead us over here, well, it's super easy to adjust down to that football. And so simple top end corners with a hand clap, just to time it up. And we throw these off of quick threes, and it allows us to be successful. And so I'm gonna, if you want me to there, I will stop there. I've got one more, but I promised myself I wouldn't go over. And so I'll stop it there. Guys, thanks so much. I hope there's something in there that you guys can take away, and I'll see if there's any questions.
So don't get me wrong, we don't want you to stop, Coach, but unfortunately we have to, yeah. So there are a few questions that I have, and the first one is, you had mentioned, obviously, we have to practice the waggle because we have so many guys in motion. And so Coach Mike wanted to know, how do we get guys when in the waggle to hit the timing on their routes properly with the initial foot? So for example, if, we're doing a 3-step slant, wide receivers on the line, it's pretty, inside foot, 1, 2, 3. But in a waggle, how are we teaching specifically to be able to get into the rhythm of a route specifically in that waggle?
Yeah, and it's a great question. And the waggle provides so much more fluidity, but provides things that are really, if you have a rigid system, it can be hard to time some of that stuff up. And so we walk, just like even some of our routes, even if we're in a standstill, like we will time up and we will walk it first. We will half speed jog our waggle second, so that they can then figure out, and again, it also depends if I'm a full cadence team, is there a certain trigger word that I take off on so that now I know that I'm running and I'm going to hit A, that bounding over the line of scrimmage correctly, but B, if you want that certain foot up at the line of scrimmage, I know what trigger word. If you're using a quick cadence and you're going off of your guys' arms and stuff like that, right? We jog it at 50. And we kind of pace it out. And I equate it to almost like, think about a long jumper, right? And so a long jumper is going to have it down to a pace that he's going to end up taking like 60 paces at full speed and be able to jump off of his dominant foot on the board every single time, right? And so if it's really important for them to have the right foot up, we will then say, okay, well, I'm going to say I need to be at 7.5 yards if I'm going to do it this one. My waggle maybe needs to be at 8 if I need to be launching off my left foot. And so as long as your cadence is consistent, then you can time it up that way.
It's a great way. Timing in the waggle is so important, especially for everything that we do, right? Hitting the line of scrimmage full speed and being able to prep. So the last question that I have for you is, we don't talk about this enough, but receivers got to block, right? Like I'm sure Coach Flaxman's same, like that running back wants to see a receiver blocking downfield. So what is, if you could sum it up into maybe one drill that's that you use most frequently to teach receivers to block, what would you use?
Yeah, and again, not to take up too much time, but if you're ever having issues with the desire or the ability to block, it's one of the most crucial things we have to get our kids on the field. And the analogy that I try to give them is, even if we have a really good football game and we run 70 plays, even if we threw the ball 40 times and we ran the ball 30, a good day for a receiver might be 5 catches. So 65 out of 70 plays, they're either run blocking or they're redirecting after the ball was thrown to somebody else and blocking. And so almost 85, 90% of a football game, they block. And sometimes us prima donnas, and I was one of them myself, we don't understand that in the moment, but it's important. And I think the single easiest and biggest drill we do is, obviously, if you've taught them the technique about hand placement and the chest plate and all of that, is closing the gap as fast as possible is one of the most important things we do, is making it look like pass, closing the gap as fast as possible. And then we'll teach the ways where if we got on his toes before he's realized it's run, we'll engage a certain way. If we then want to break down 2 yards away from him and react to his movement, is the other way. But just a simple drill where we want to try to get on his toes as fast as possible. And we teach it in those 3 scenarios. And so he's breaking in and we have to shuffle into place. He's breaking out, we got to shuffle into place. Or he hasn't realized it yet. And best case scenario for a receiver, be a really good actor and you can probably just run your guy off and not have to block him at all.
So the last thing I want to leave with you, Coach, like I know for us at the OUA level, us receiver coaches, we want to have as many receivers on the roster as we can. And one of the things that you said, right, is, guys need to be able to block so they can get on the roster. So I want to talk real quick and for you to make the connection with receivers are probably actually the optimal people that we want on special teams if we can teach the physicality of it. And, the stack and replace and all the things that we're teaching receivers to make space with our hands basically are everything that special teams coordinators want. So can you maybe, usually we don't necessarily think of receivers right away because we don't think of them as physical or be able to make tackles, but we want to be able to get receivers on the field. So can you maybe just talk about how those skills are interchangeable for guys?
Well, absolutely. And like you think about a lot of those positions, and I mentioned like D-line and receiver hand fighting and press releases are very similar skills. And so the whole art of getting off the line of scrimmage, trying not to get touched and being able to stack people. If you think about gunners on punt team, if you think about kickoff running a lane where you need to avoid the first level, and the ability to stock block on return teams as a skill. And so it's really, really translatable. And I'll tell you, of the receivers I've had the privilege to coach, the ones who have had the most longevity in the CFL, like God love them, it's not because they were the best receiver in the CFL. It was because they had special teams value that they made it past a 2-year mark or a 3-year mark. It's because they can make a tackle. And I actually think, to Coach Flaxman's point on the last one of the ball security circuit being really, really important, one of the things that I've done is we incorporate any of those guys into tackling circuits, because if you're going to ask to put them in that position, we're doing them a disservice if we don't teach our running backs and our receivers how to tackle on special teams. Because you're right, it's great if they can get down there, but if they don't know how to break down, fit up, then they're in trouble, right? Or they're doing something dangerous, or they're missing the tackle. And so we getting them into a tackling circuit, and I know defense coordinators love to run tackling circuits at least once a week. And so get them down there, teach them how to do it, so that when they've got all of these skill sets, they can finish the play.
I love it. Got to get receivers tackling. That's what we need. So, Coach Galloway, I appreciate that. Was fantastic. I really appreciate you being able to come in and talk receivers, and excited to be able to see, actually go see some games in the upcoming year. So,
thank you very much.